Welcome to Journey Unto You. My name is Lorraine, and I am your host. On this platform, we will explore all things autism and other subjects and needs within the community. I have shared my own personal journey and how it all got started. I do hope to encourage you, strengthen and build you up, and even get some questions answered. This platform is for anyone who has had autism on their path. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and just listen in. There is hope. Welcome to Journey Unto You. And once again, my name is Lorraine Brown, and I am your host. It has been a couple of weeks since I have posted, and there have been reasons for that. I have had a lot of transitions in my life this whole month, all of them good, some of them unexpected, and some of them I kind of knew would happen but didn't know when. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about one of those transitions today as it relates to special needs and ABA. As a lot of you know, I am a registered behavior technician and got into the field because I have a son on the spectrum, and that led me down the path to this field. When I first discovered that this was a thing, I didn't realize that there was an actual name to it, because when my son was receiving services, they didn't really call it ABA, and RBTs weren't really a thing, or behavior technicians. It was more paras or one-on-ones, and that type of language was used. So I was really excited about it, and I thought it was so cool. And when I began to research it and find out what it required, it wasn't the right timing for me. It wasn't until maybe about a year later that I looked back into it. And I knew that I was being led to it, but again, it wasn't the right timing. So when I revisited the idea, at that time, I was doing a lot of in-home care and respite for special needs, for the special needs population. So I was doing that in addition to getting the training to be an RBT. Now, most RBTs, not all, get their training when they get hired by a clinic. And then a lot of the clinics offer the training, and you can go through it with them. It's paid for, and it's generally, I think, a good thing. For me, however, I chose to pay for mine because I wanted to go through the local community college. I felt for me that would look better on a resume, and also I wanted to be able to have that upper hand when I started looking for work. My theory, which proved to be right, was that if I wasn't already certified or passed the competency test, because you do have to pass a competency test after your training before you take the national testing. So my thought was, well, if I go through a clinic, they're probably going to lowball me a little bit. And that proved to be true. That is a true statement. If you don't have the training, I mean, you know, in the real world, in the world of corporate, I mean, if you don't have the training, they're not really required to give you a better salary, right? So I wanted that golden ticket, at least a little bit, to even, because I knew I would be coming into the field as a newbie. And so getting that training was very helpful prior to the event. And I was also moving to another state. So I was going to be starting my RBT career in another state. So getting that training ahead of time was very helpful in my case. My first job was with a company in another state, and in general, it was a great experience. I feel like the clinic that I started at was a really good clinic for new RBTs. Everyone was pretty patient, and the environment was good for me just starting out. I knew that I would probably outgrow it. And I also knew that at some point I'd be moving again because that was also part of the journey for me. And so that experience with that first clinic, I learned a lot. I met other RBTs that I'm still in contact with. And the director of that clinic was a very experienced woman, and she was very patient and very flexible, very family centered. And so that created for a relaxed environment for a new RBT. And so I got to spread my wings a little bit there. While I was in that particular state, I did also work for a very short period of time in an in-home setting while I was doing clinic. That was not such a great experience. I had heard from other RBTs that in-home clinic was not, their favorite. I will say, though, that in-home clinic does serve its purpose. There's a reason for it. I think the majority, though, and I'm generalizing some, but the majority of clients, I think, need to be in a clinic setting. In-home serves a purpose for certain skills, such as if the child needs to learn life skills, such as sweeping or doing dishes, or a lot of assisted, well, for lack of better words, ADLs. And those are any types of skills that are in the home, so to speak, like loading the dishwasher, or maybe they need to learn brushing their teeth, although we did do this in clinic with some clients. So there's certain aspects of in-home that are great. Sometimes it's a good fit for clients who are higher functioning, who just need a couple of hours and it's after school. We do have those. I'm going to get a little bit into the structure of how a child is given hours, because it is, in my humble opinion, one of the downsides to ABA. At the end of the day, everything's a business, right? In-home can be challenging because the parents are there or some type of care provider. And so the children are in their environment and they know it well. And so if there's any type of task that they don't want to do when you're doing therapy with them, they tend to show more escape behavior and task avoidance behaviors. That can be very challenging in the home setting, and that's typically why RBTs don't care for it very much. The flip side of that is that it pays the most. And so I think it's good, though, for anybody in the RBT field to at least try it and just see for yourself how you feel about it. I can think of one RBT that I know for a fact that she was with a family in home for a couple of years. She would go with this particular child into the school setting. So she was with him. He did go to a private school. So she was with him, and then she would come home and do a couple more hours with him. So that was kind of her thing with this particular client. That is not uncommon. So she was a good fit for this family. That's the thing. It's kind of like, it does have to be a good fit. And sometimes the in-home setting does attract parents who are a little bit more hoverish, if I can use that word. They're a little bit more skittish about leaving their child in a clinic setting, or they kind of want to, I'm just going to be transparent. They want to control it a little bit more. And that can be very problematic. I've experienced that, and it is very difficult. Typically, these types of families, when one or both parents even are like that, they go through a lot of RBTs because it makes our jobs hard. And a lot of times it's a hindrance to the child's success. Not in every case. Again, I'm generalizing that this is what I've seen and this is what I've experienced. It's not in all cases. As I've just explained about this other RBT that I knew, and she had a great situation. So I got to do that in this particular state. And so I tried by hand at it for a little while, and I said, this isn't a good for me right now. And so I went back to clinic full time. And then when I moved again to another state that I'm in now, I went right into full-time clinic. And so that's where I stayed. But then a window of opportunity came up for me I had looked into a school setting prior to getting a position with the school district. It just wasn't the right timing, and there was just some pieces not in place at that time. But this same recruiting company called me about a year later, and they said, "Hey, are you still open to this?" And so, of course, I was, and the school setting pays very well also. And so, especially if you have people going up to bat for you, like a recruiter who's on your side and they're really there to support you, I can't stress recruiters enough. I just love the fact that they just really go up to bat for you, and they really do honor your experience and your expertise. So I can't stress that enough. So I did get an opportunity to go into the school district. Putting a pin in that for a moment. When I first became an RBT, I did work with another RBT who had been doing ABA for a very long time. She was a little bit older than myself, and she'd had experience in all arenas as well. And she had explained to me that working in the school setting was really tough. And she said, there's certain things you can't do that you can do in clinic. And she explained what those things were. And if you don't have the teacher on your side, it just makes for not such a great environment. And at that time, I didn't totally know what she meant because I had no frame of reference. I hadn't experienced any of that. But I took note to it. But I still wanted to try my hand at it. So fast forwarding back to where I put a pin in it, I went ahead and decided that I wanted to spread my wings a little more and try the school setting. And at first, it was wonderful because you meet with the BCBA generally once a week, as opposed to in a clinic where you have a BCBA every single day. Now, that's good too. There are times when you absolutely need the assistance of a BCBA, especially if you're new. And for me, that was such a benefit. I had wonderful BCBAs. Honestly, I can count on one hand, maybe 2 or 3 that weren't so great. But other than that, every BCBA I worked with has been just amazing. And so, yeah, there's not much more to say about that. They work very hard. And so my experience with the BCBAs has been wonderful. So in a school setting, you are what's considered an independent contractor. So you're kind of, in a way, your own boss. Most school districts do not welcome ABA unless it's a charter or a private. That may vary from state to state, however. But in general, public school settings don't bring therapy into their schools. And that's really sad because there's a lot of children who could benefit from it. And I do hope that changes in the future. But getting back to point, I was in a self-contained classroom, and I worked in a district that was considered, for lack of better words, privileged. I'll just say it that way. And so that's actually one of the reasons I took the job, because I hadn't experienced a school setting before and I didn't know what that was going to be like. So at first, it was great. At first, I came into a setting where there was some really high behaviors. I had been assigned a child who had a lot of physical aggression. And they had gone through a few RBTs in this situation, and also a couple of teachers. And I came in on the scene in November. So that's how much change had happened because of the room. And this particular school was not overly experienced with self-contained classroom. And what self-contained means is that these children, they stay in the room. They don't go out into the general school arena because of their behaviors. Usually it does mean that they have some high level aggressive type behaviors, but not necessarily. It can be that because of their needs, it's just not reasonable to have them generalized into the regular settings with all the other children. But they do a lot of the same things. It just looks different. So in my case, though, they were really struggling with a particular student. So I came in. I'm also QBS trained, so I had some skills in that way. This particular district, however, used CPI training, so I ended up having to get that training as well. And what that does is equips you to put children in proper holds that don't hurt you and don't hurt the children, but allows for the child to be restrained, for lack of better words, if they are being unsafe to themselves or anybody else in the environment. Holds are not a preferred way of handling situations. They are very last resort. And so in this case, the training was needed. And I did get hurt a few times. This kiddo was as big as me and was just on autopilot when I first got there. And I'm not going to go too much into this particular school setting because honestly, that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But I will end it saying that it turned out to be an extremely toxic environment and dysfunctional. The teacher was young and a very prideful person. So rather than work with me, she did things that were very inappropriate, unprofessional. I mean, all she did was show me her age and how inexperienced and unprofessional she really was, and had a lot of growing to do. So it was a bad situation, to the point that I ended up actually going and doing about 3 sessions of therapy paid by the school district for that situation alone. It was so bad. They didn't want me to leave and offered me a bonus to stay. The school year was kind of winding down. It was about maybe early April. I was trying so hard to hang in there. It was rough. It was a tough situation where I really wasn't practicing ABA. I was more pulling from concepts of ABA. This would have been a horrific situation to send a new RBT into. But by the grace of God, I did get through it. I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of warfare prayer daily. And by the end of the year, though, it had gotten pretty bad. And I did end up leaving 3 days early from the end of my contract. I had to. It was bad. So with that being said, I still had to work. So I decided that I would give in-home another shot because I wasn't really wanting to work in clinic. And the reason I didn't want to work in clinic again was because I was starting to get a little tired and felt that I needed a little bit of a break from a 40-hour week. Doing ABA for 40 hours, in addition to drive time, and it can make for a long week. And so I decided to work for an in-home company, which turned out to be phenomenal. They just hands down the best company I've ever been with. I wish I could name them, but I can't. I've got to keep that disclosed, but just wonderful company. And the director is very pro-family himself. And so the structure and the culture of the company was set up like that. They were very good to me. And so I appreciated that because I was coming out of a little bit of a traumatic experience that other RBTs have experienced, but I just didn't know. And so he was hesitant to place me with any type of behaviors. We talked about that, and that just wasn't going to be a good fit. So I ended up working at another school, but it was a private preschool. And I was by the time I actually got to this particular setting, I was a little on burnout, but this child had no behaviors. There were a series of things that kind of occurred. I was supposed to be having longer hours with this client. It ended up getting shorter. So I had to take another client on. But the only available client that fit the window that I could work was a child who had very high behaviors. So, but they were getting better. The first day I met with this client in the afternoon, I knew he needed to be in clinic, that in-home therapy was not going to be a good fit. And if you remember, I did say that a lot of times when you're in an in-home setting, these children have figured out how to manipulate their environment. They may have autism and they may have other diagnosis, but they're still very smart. And they when they don't want to work, they know how to work that out. And so this was no different. Long story short, I felt that I was going to need to back out of this client. I was getting spit on regularly. This child was completely out of control, and I just didn't have it in me. And so I did make the hard decision to let that client go. But the clinic that I worked for also had to make the hard decision to let the client go because he really did need to be in a clinic setting. And I worked for an in-home company, so they referred him out, and little did I know that they had gone through several RBTs with this particular child. And so I knew it wasn't me. In addition to, I think they went through 2 or 3 BCBAs. So that tells you a lot. And I did start off the conversation saying that, when you're in an in-home setting and you've got certain types of family structures, it can really work against you as a therapist and make your job. At the end of the day, I was miserable. And so I was also dealing with another school setting where I was starting to deal with some very common attitudes that are in the school settings with the teachers. A lot of these teachers, not all, but a lot of these teachers, for some reason, they feel threatened when we come in the room. I don't know if they want to be in control of their environment. They don't want anybody telling anybody else what to do in the room. And it's funny because we're actually there to help them, to make their job easier so that we can focus on that one child. And it's still their classroom. It's just this child needs more. And it's really to take the weight off of the teacher. And most of the teachers do not respond that way. And that's very interesting to me. I had a conversation with a BCBA that used to be a teacher. And actually, some of the BCBAs that I've worked with have been former teachers. And they all say the same thing. It's a pride issue. And it's a lack of training and understanding about what ABA really is and what it is we do. And that really made me sad. I know there's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough training space, funds, all the things that go into a school district. There just wasn't any space to get staff trained to know, hey, we have this third party coming in. This is what they do. This is what it looks like. It's no big deal. It's going to help us in the long run. I would also go so far as to say that with public school settings, I don't know that there's this overall concern about our children. And someone could get mad at me and say, well, that's not true. I'm a teacher, or that's not true. My son or daughter had a great experience. Well, I think overall in America, the school systems, we all know what it looks like right now. And so I don't know that with our special needs population if that's any different. So the resources aren't going to be a priority to bring ABA in. The ABA is expensive. And so I think a lot of these districts don't have the funding, and I don't think they're going to make the funding. And I'm just being transparent. So as I began to see a lot of these things, and keep in mind, I've also homeschooled my children, and we had some experience with the school setting because I had two sons in life skills programs. So I had some experience with the schools, but it was limited and it wasn't in a general setting. So I didn't really know totally what the public school looked like and or the last school setting that I was in, which was a preschool private setting. And really at the end of the day, wasn't ran much differently. This began to feel unethical to me. I saw things from start to finish in my career as a RBT that were unethical and that parents, and I'm going to say some hard things, that parents could sue for. There were things that I felt the clinics that I worked with made decisions based on insurance billing and insurance hours. Insurance does require a certain amount of hours for billing. Some children get more, some get less based on their disabilities, but there are some complexities with insurance companies. And also, too, it does need to be worth it. You know, if you're bringing your child into a clinic, if you're just coming for an hour, that can be, you know, a little exhausting if you have to bring them every day and a little disruptive to a child's schedule or a parent's work schedule. So I don't want to totally say that having your child there for a long stretch is bad, because I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I just think that there were times when I saw it be used as basically childcare by parents. There were times when I saw parents needed to be called because their child was sick or they were tired and asleep. And we are held to this code that if a child falls asleep during therapy, we can only let them sleep for 7 minutes. I've heard 15 from some agencies. And then we have to wake them up because ethically we can't bill for that. Well, I've seen children who really needed to nap and were all done, but they would wake them up and push them and not call parents. And it's not that I think clinics are at fault. I think some of the parents are at fault. I think some parents would act irritated if you called them. Some parents were like, well, I can't leave my job. And I get that too. But at the end of the day, if your child's sick, yeah, you need to come get them. I saw clinics not call parents when a child was sick. They just let them stay at clinic and get everybody else sick. This was a habitual thing that I saw. I didn't like that at all. And I saw that even more so when I was in the school setting. Parents would supposedly give their child some type of fever reducer or whatever. You could just tell that their child wasn't feeling good and send them to school, and they clearly needed to be at home. I saw this all the time. And I just thought it was so selfish. And with the cultural change in our country, I began to do a lot of deep thinking and really being aware of how I was feeling when I was coming home and all the experiences I had had and my own personal life, given my age as well. I'm in my 50s. And I had to really sit back and say, am I a good fit for this field anymore? I love working with special needs, and I want to continue that, and I am going to continue that. That is part of one of my earthly assignments, and I want to continue to be a vessel. But I also don't want to feel like I am consistently sacrificing my morals and values and things that I see that are clearly immorally wrong. I have seen RBTs call OSHA and report clinics for immoral practices. And I realize I'm sort of telling all the tea, but this is the stuff that goes on in clinics, not with all clinics. My advice to parents would be do your research. See if other parents are willing to share their experiences. Look on the website, look at the reviews, see if there's actual parents and what their experience is. Look at the good and the bad, because just because someone else has had a negative experience, it might be something that you're like, oh, well, that's not a big deal for my family. Someone else's version of negativity might not be your version of negativity. And not all clinics are bad. And I don't want to put that tone out there. It is like anything. You must do your homework, do your research, and ask for, if your child is going to go into a clinic setting, ask for experienced RBTs to work with your child. And if you can't get that, keep it moving. And even when an RBT is experienced, they may not be the best fit. One of the things that I began to see that was really a discouragement for me, and this is something that the other RBT that I shared, she was older than myself and she had been in the field for many years. She had said to me that the culture of ABA was changing and a lot of younger RBTs were coming in. And I have noticed that as well. So being an RBT is a really good caveat to other fields, such as a psychologist, or if you want to be a BCBA, or maybe you're going into social work. So a lot of these younger people are coming out of or are in school getting their bachelor's or master's. And this is a great fit because it does have flexibility for a college student. But what I began to see was that this was becoming the norm. So you're getting people who don't have any experience with special needs at all. And if they do, it might be because they have a sibling, possibly, or maybe some type of relative. Most of them are not parents, and they might have taken maybe a child development class. I quote unquote that in college. I'm not saying don't take a child development class. I realize that's one of the requirements for many fields. However, it is not going to teach you the life experience that you need to have with children and discern their needs. What I saw was a huge lack of discernment and wisdom. I saw it repeatedly. And I saw children misunderstood. I even saw children lied on. Flat out, some RBTs would say things that weren't true to BCBAs. I mean, absolutely flabbergasted me. And I'm just going to be real. And this began to really fester in my spirit and make me sad. And it no longer became an ethical or authentic environment for me as a person and what I believe in for children. And so I made the decision, although I knew it was coming at some point because I knew I wouldn't retire in this field. I knew that I was going to be called to other things. I just didn't know when. I made the decision to lay my RBT card down. I am no longer going to be an RBT as of September 5th. That'll be my official last day. And I'm still certified, but I will put my status in an inactive mode in the national database. I don't believe I will come back to the field. The Father has called me into other aspects that have purpose. This season of my life as an RBT served a purpose. Hands down, I was called to it. I don't regret it. I met some phenomenal people who I just think are just wonderful. I wish I could name their names and give them shout outs because they're amazing people. The very last BCBA that I got the opportunity to work with kind of came on the scene with me towards the last 2 weeks of my job. And she's just amazing young lady. And so there are people out there who really do care. So this isn't to discourage anybody. It's to bring awareness. And whether we like it or not, these younger people coming up just haven't been trained the same. They have not been taught the same foundations as some of us who are older. And I saw that, and it began to be hard to really walk in justification of it. I am not a fan of the school system at all. I wasn't before when I homeschooled. Now I'm really not. And I don't need to get into that. There's plenty of YouTube videos. Do your research. And I know that some parents simply don't have other choices. And I get that there's grace and there's mercy for that. But the school systems cannot raise your children. And they are overworked teachers. They do have a lot of lack of training in some areas. It just is what it is. So as I bring these things out, it's not to blame or to bring fault, but there are layers to it. A lot of parents, there are some great parents. I have met them, but a lot of parents kind of just drop their children off. And I know they're tired. I get it. There's layers, but we still have to be parents. We still have to be looking out for our children. We can't just drop them off at clinic and say, oh, provide for my child. I've seen parents do that as if we're a daycare setting or we're glorified nannies. And that's just not what we do. So I also think that RBTs work very hard. A lot of them are very underpaid. And it's a field that I think requires more training than what they are now requiring. I think that ABA is a wonderful tool when it's put in its right compartment with the right people. And I have seen some horrible things. I've had to report other RBTs. I've seen things that as a parent would have made me madder than a hippo with a hernia. And I absolutely would have probably gotten a lawyer. That's just the truth. And so this wore on me over time. And so I did have to make the hard choice to back out. And the last situation that I was in really was just a catalyst with the teachers. There was an employee there that said something that 100% was not true. And I made that clear it wasn't true, and we got it all worked out. But it was a catalyst to me saying, I'm too tired. I'm all done. And it was okay, because I really do need to focus on some other things. I want to give more energy into this podcast and really bring some more information and resources and do a lot more interviews with parents. I'm also in school getting a certification in ministry. And when I am all done with that, I will be more, I will share what type of ministry that is. Right now, I don't feel led to share that, but I'm also still working with special needs, just with adults right now. So I kind of have my hands in other pots as well. I'm very much an advocate for parents. I'm an advocate for the providers. It's a hard place to be in. And this type of field, ABA or any other setting that requires someone to work with special needs, you have to be gifted in that. You have to have a heart for it. It has to be your wheelhouse. If you're someone who is looking to get into that field, that's amazing. That's great. We need more people who have a heart for this community. There aren't enough. As we say in the biblical world, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. And so with that, ABA is not for everyone. Please do your research and be picky. It's okay to be picky when you're going to an ABA clinic. And maybe in-home clinic is for you and your family. Do that too. It's not a one-size-fits-all. This was just my experience. And there are some wonderful clinics out there. I wish I could say the company that I work for, because they are grassroots and they're just amazing people. And I grew very fond of them very quickly. But I had to make a decision for myself that was going to better serve this season in my life and our future and all the things that the Lord is calling me to. So I give the Father all glory and honor for the process that He's allowed me to walk as an RBT, and that I can say I did it. It was a wonderful experience, but it was also a very challenging and exhausting experience, but working with one of the most amazing populations on this planet. And so that, I think, is all I have to say about that. God is good. He's a good Father, and He takes care of us. And He gave me the strength to do something that I never saw myself doing. And He's bringing me into other arenas that I never saw myself doing. I am going to continue to bring other parents on to tell their stories, and that, if I had have not become an RBT, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, because out of becoming an RBT, I was actually encouraged by other BCBAs to start a podcast. And I got asked several times to even become a BCBA, but I knew that the Lord was not leading me down that path. And so I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful. And even though I saw things that were, I have to be truthful and say weren't good, I'm still glad I went through them and saw them. I wouldn't change anything. I've met some wonderful children that have touched my heart, and I'll never forget their little faces. I wish I could say their names too, because they were absolutely adorable. And I've worked with some wonderful parents. There are some great parents out there who are just seeking the best for their children. And so I'm glad I got to be a part of that. I'm thankful that other parents have allowed me and trusted me with their children for hours in a day, because it takes courage to do that as well. And so with that, I'm going to end this podcast, and just know that you are valued and loved and treasured as a parent, as a caregiver, as a provider. And if you're a person with needs who listens to this podcast, you are amazing. You are amazing. And we as parents, hands down, would lay our lives down for you if the Lord called us to do that. But thank God we serve a God who's already done that. And so with that, have a wonderful, blessed afternoon. Goodbye.
Now I've journeyed oh so far just to get right where you are, the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. Though this cold road which I walked taught me to run to you, and you found me 'cause I was lost, but journeyed unto you. For all my battles you have fought, your word faithful and true. When it was comfort that I sought, my peace you did renew. Most of this cold road I walked, I was carried by you. Guide our talk and hearts and thoughts as we journey unto you. Jesus Christ, I thank you for all you brought me through. Help us to lead your children to journey unto you. And help us to lead all the children to journey unto you.